Welcome to the Elizabeth Cunningham Show, courageously expanding love with me, Elizabeth Cunningham. Has the way that love has arisen in you seemed out of place or even taboo? My mission is to expand the conversation of love in the world. Is it possible to have deep, loving, healthy relationships? Have you ever been curious about having more than one relationship or partner at a time? Get ready to transform in love, be courageous, and set yourself free. In this show, we talk about relationships, sex, love, and the ways we wish we could be, but never thought were possible. All right, welcome to the Elizabeth Cunningham Show, courageously expanding love. And today we are talking about desire as a path to liberation. And before we get into that, just as a reminder, the Elizabeth Cunningham Show is live every Tuesday at 3 p.m. on the Transformation Network Facebook page, and is then aired on YouTube and podcast every single Thursday. All links are in the show notes. And on today's episode, we will be talking with Claire Rumore about desire as a path to liberation. And before I have her say anything, I will introduce her. Claire is a coach, counselor, and professional confidant for men, women, and couples who come to her deeply desiring to understand themselves as multidimensional, sexual, spiritual, and relational beings. She is also co-director at the Shakti Shiva Academy. Her areas of interest and expertise include non-dual tantra, sexual shadow integration, emotional integration, attachment styles, erotic blueprints created by Jaiya, sexual energy awakening, cosmic sexuality and energy sex, and existential kink created by Carolyn Elliott. She is a certified erotic blueprints coach and has trained in the Hakomi method of somatic psychotherapy, co-counseling, positive psychology, sacred kink, and pleasure activism. You are just a rock star of a human being. Claire, welcome to the show.
Oh, Elizabeth, it's so good to be with you, and I've really been looking forward to this. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you are so welcome. Yes, side note, I've been asking Claire to be on the show for months, and she's here now. So I'm so excited to have you. I'm like, come play with me on my show.
Yes, here we are. Yay.
Here we are. And such a great topic. I'm so excited to dive in today. For those people who watch and listen on a regular basis, we're doing things a little bit differently today. So get ready, strap in, strap on. And but as per usual, I do want to lay the groundwork. So we're talking about desire as a path to liberation instead of a path to suffering. So starting off with, what do we mean by all of these things? So what do you mean when you say desire?
This is such a great question. And it's one that we might skip over because it seems so fundamental that, well, of course, we know what we're talking about. Desire is desire. However,
you desire things, we both desire things. We're talking about
exactly,
the same thing, right?
Exactly, clearly. And desire must be something significant, because if the Buddha even said, at least allegedly said, purportedly said, desire is the root or the cause of all suffering, then there must be something very significant about desire. So the way I define desire is that welling up inside, that energy inside that's pointing you in a certain direction, whether it has a sexual connotation, like a desire to commingle with another body in a certain way, or it's a desire for a material object, or for a particular place, or a particular experience. So basically, it's a welling up of an energy that's then moving outside of ourselves. It's creating a motivation or impetus, sending us in a certain direction. Now, what exactly it's pointing towards can be an infinite number of things, but at its core place is that welling up of energy, moving us externally.
And what I hear in you saying that is in relationship with another person, when we're saying like, oh, we both, like, I desire you, right?
Yes.
But then, like, what does that mean? What is that welling up in us? What does that mean? How are we desiring this other person, and being able to also parcel that out as well, right? And so, and you started talking about this, but yeah, what do you mean as far as like desire can be a path to liberation? You know, you're comparing it to Buddha and this idea that actually desire is the root of suffering. But you're challenging Buddha. Okay.
Or I'm challenging the modern interpretation of something Buddha said,
Yeah.
but some of the words that Buddha used or sentiments that Buddha used were actually edited or not included in that original sentiment. And so now we get to question, like, wait a second, is it just de facto across the board desire is a bad thing because it leads to suffering? Or could there be a back door? And could it be that desire could lead to liberation? Because when we actually turn towards our desire, as opposed to judge ourselves for having a particular desire or judge somebody else for having a particular desire, we're immediately cutting off connection with self, with life, with other when we do that judging. However, when we turn towards the desire and we actually see, okay, what is this desire pointing to? It seems that it's towards or about this person or about this particular act or this particular thing, like, oh, I want this beautiful car or this big house or this new job, or I want to move to this particular place, or whatever the desire is, again, that take infinite forms. But with desire, there's always something well under the surface that's not apparent to the eye upon first glance. And so that's my message here, and what we'll keep unpacking today is looking at what's under the surface of desire. I thought it was just there's a hot person, or my partner's super hot and I want to do this really exciting thing with him, her, them, they. And what else is there? And so we're gonna teach people at least the start of how to look under the hood.
So first of all, that there may be a large game of telephone happening with interpreting
Yes.
text. Weird. That's so weird. I thought that, you know, everything that's been translated is just completely and 100%, you know, true.
Don't we wish?
From thousands of years ago.
Don't we wish? Don't we wish? Basically, at least my interpretation of what the Buddha was teaching is that desire can become the root of suffering if we attach to the object or the outcome. And so the statement, the teaching got clipped or edited just to be desire is the root of all suffering. Desire is the cause of all suffering. Without the if you or if we ... attach, if we become fixated on the object and create an object of desire.
Yeah, no, I totally, I completely get that. And then, and also, like, for those of you who don't hear sarcasm very well, I was being sarcastic.
Very sarcastic.
I know there's some people that don't read sarcasm, so just to make that clear, that was completely sarcastic. Yes, of course, we misinterpret things, even in even when someone said something earlier today.
Exactly.
We misinterpret it, and
forget
so
thousands of years ago.
Forget thousands of years ago. Yeah, exactly. It's like, you forgot what your partner said this morning. Okay.
Exactly.
And I also love the, you know, looking deeper. What is the deep, like, looking under the hood of, that was the word you used, looking under the hood of desire and what's actually underneath that. Because we tend to stay very surface level, you know, like, and you know, not just with desire, but like really any emotion, right? It's like, I'm angry at this thing, and so therefore this thing is a bad thing, right? I like this thing, so therefore this thing is a good thing, without actually examining what is truly underneath there. And so it makes total sense that desire would operate in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you think before we, yeah. Okay. I'll just ask this question. What do you think people find so frightening about desire?
Gosh, what is so frightening about desire? I mean, think about it. If you were to get everything you desired, first off, all that yes, all that energy coming at you, that's a lot to contend with. So, first off, people are afraid of being overwhelmed.
Mm.
The other thing, if we're just at the surface level, we haven't even gone below, looked under the hood, is that people, how to put this, people are so used to being frozen in longing that to actually have an opportunity to receive the thing they were longing for butts up against the imprint of longing, butts up against the familiar state, which is wanting, grasping, desiring.
Sorry,
And so
not
it could
having.
so they've begun identifying or have an identity with not having. So if they were to all of a sudden have, that could change everything. You know, if I'm all of a sudden the executive of this big company and I was so identified with not being that because, well, I'm not good enough, or who am I, or I don't have the credentials yet, or, you know, insert your desire, owning that particular house or having that particular partner or partners or that particular material object. We're
Or
so
that type of
identified.
sex even.
That type of sex, like, who am I to have that? I'm so identified with the person, the being who doesn't have that. So it would create an identity change. So some people are afraid of that subconsciously, don't realize that they're more comfortable in a state of longing than either moving towards or pushing away.
I hadn't honestly even thought of, I mean, that's exactly accurate. It's like the fear of desire is like an identity crisis. Like, who would I be if I really got everything that I wanted?
1000%. 1000%. So that's a first layer of inquiry right there. What's keeping me from desiring what I want to desire? Who would I be, or who would I become, or who would people perceive me as? Because all of a sudden, if I have this amazing relationship, would people envy me? If I'm all of a sudden a 6, 7 or more figured, if that's important to me, earner of wealth, would that change my relationships? Would that change my friendships? Would people view me differently? Am I ready for that? You know, and on and on. If I'm driving my beautiful car, are people going to look at me differently than if I'm
Right.
in my, you know, just everyday vehicle that doesn't
Right.
turn heads?
Ooh, oh my gosh. Okay, we are gonna take a really quick break, but that, I mean, this is just starting to look under the hood.
And we're just scratching the surface
We're
right now.
just scratching the surface. I know, I'm like, oh wow, okay. This is where we're starting. Beautiful. So when we get back from break, we are going to dive even deeper into what does it mean to really have what you desire, and how do you relate to yourself and relate to the things that you now have or are going to have, right?
Totally. And then we're going to go even deeper and look
Mhm.
at what might be the genesis, what might be causing us to even desire the things we want, because there's fixating on objects of desire, all those things out there, and then there's becoming the actual subject of desire. So we're going to keep digging deeper, deeper, deeper.
Claire, oh my gosh. All right, we'll be right back. Welcome back to the Elizabeth Cunningham Show, courageously expanding love. And we are here with Claire Rumore talking about desire as liberation. And oh my gosh. So we're going to just dive right back in to what we were talking about, which is why do people find desire so frightening? And it's because it's an identity crisis. Like, who would I be? Who would I be if I got everything that I wanted? If I were the exact person who I wanted to be, if I had the exact relationships that I wanted to have, what would other people think of me? Right. So, in starting back in and diving a little bit deeper, so what does it mean to relate to desire from the subject as opposed to the object.
Totally. Before I get into that, let me add one little twist to what you just said, because there's the identity crisis of who would I be if I actually got what I desired, because that could change how people perceive me. And then there's the who would I be if I didn't get my desire fulfilled, or if I actually was this trait, this characteristic that I don't want people to perceive me as. And so there's also that identity crisis of how would people react and relate with me then if I actually was this thing I don't want. So you can see,
I actually really just am lonely, if I actually really just am
all these things I'm judging. All these things I'm judging.
You know, not able to relate to people in the way that I want to, not able to ask for wrong. I get that a lot from clients. I'm sure you hear that as well. What if I really just am wrong? Wrong,
and therefore bad.
Yeah.
It comes down to, I am bad and others are good, or this is bad, that is good. So what I'm pointing to right here is this concept, this phenomenon called polarities. And I'm not talking about sexual polarity in this instance. I'm talking about duality. I'm talking about polar opposites that create a split in humans, in humanity, of the dance between I desire, or I want this thing over here. I find it acceptable. I find it good. And then this other thing back here that I don't want to be perceived at. I find it unacceptable. I find it bad. So whenever there's an attraction and repulsion phenomenon happening, that's called being polarized and having active polarities. Therefore, we're in a state of separation. We've moved out of oneness, which would be the acceptance and embrace of all states, having and not having, being a thing and not being a thing. And that's our ultimate essence. That's what non-dual tantra is pointing to, that we are the totality of everything. And so anytime, and humans do this all the time, but anytime we step out of that totality and we move towards something, this is something I want from a compulsive place. And then this is something I don't want. Like, I want to move. I don't want to stay where I am. Or I want a partnership. I don't want to be single. Or I want to leave my partnership. I don't want to stay in it. Whatever it is, we, if it's coming from a compulsive and from an unconscious place, then we're inside of a polarity. We're disintegrated. We've moved out of integration. So I want to point that out. It's kind of a high level concept, but it's really important to understand, especially when we talk about being or having objects of desire versus being the subject of desire. So having objects of desire is our everyday state, you know, like we're fixated on a person, place, thing, experience that we want. And anything that's outside of us is obviously an object that we're desiring. Even if it's our partner, we're still objectifying them because we're never, ever really relating to the actual person or to the actual place or to the actual object. We're always interacting with whatever our filters have projected upon that person, place, or thing. And that's coming from our past experiences. It's coming from our wins, our losses, good experiences, bad experiences, whatever it is, we're plastering them outside and making objects of desire.
Yeah, and it makes me think of like being in love with when you are in a relationship and you're like, am I in love with this person or am I in love with the idea?
Bingo. That's exactly what I'm pointing to.
Yeah.
And not just the idea, because that makes it sound like there's a universal idea of this person. It's more my idea.
My idea
of this person.
Yeah. My projection, my past, my filters, my, wants, hopes. I think that's a lot that comes up in relationships is like, I hope that it will go this way. I hope that you always will be this way that I like you being. Like, don't not be this way. And obviously that's impossible because people are going to be all the ways. And that's part of the package. Yeah. Well, and I think that that's such a huge, I just want to stay on that just for a
Mhm.
second, because I think that's such a huge, um, like concept, like kind of a mind blown moment of
Mm,
just like, we're never really relating to who people really are.
mm.
We're always relating to them inside of some sort of projection or filter. And so my question is it ever possible? Can you do enough work? Can you do enough inner work to truly see someone for who they really are?
This is the path we're on. This is exactly what we're aiming to find out. Because think about when we are fixating on a person, like wanting them to be a certain way, and therefore we're projecting on them. And if they change or if they stop being that certain way, it's going to be very upsetting to us. You can start to see how desire can be a cause of suffering. Because if I'm requiring you, Elizabeth, like I really like these traits of yours, I don't like these other ones, so don't do them. Don't be that. And you need to
Don't be
start
that
listening.
version of you, be this version of you.
Exactly. And then if you're one day this other version of you, even for 10 minutes, even for 10 seconds, because I've attached to you not being that and instead being this,
Mm,
it's going to be very upsetting to me. It's going to cause me suffering because I've fixated, I've attached to a
mm,
certain reality and a certain outcome. So that's why we're saying, okay, it's time to reel back the projections. Like, sure, I would love for us to forever be harmonious and our best traits interacting with each other. However,
mm,
that's not the reality or the nature of relationships in this instance. And so it's important to, I call it shifting from horizontal relating, because when I'm horizontally relating with you, I'm reaching out and I'm grasping for
yeah.
a certain experience or a certain thing I want to have, a certain whatever it is that's outside of myself. So think of horizontal relating as like the outside of me, the outside of you. And there's
Mhm.
almost always projection involved.
Yeah.
So this is object of desire relating. I've made an object of you. Like I really want to emphasize, like we're so good at doing that. We are like the best at making objects of desire as humans. And so now imagine a vertical relating. So with a vertical relating, I now don't require that you be a certain way.
Mm,
I'm now more in the subject of desire placement. So let me explain that, because again, this is a high level teaching, but once we orient this way, it will start to shift our reality with sex, love, relationships. When we're
mm,
in subject of desire, when I'm in subject of desire, for example, I I shift from being Claire who desires this car, or Claire who desires this type of relationship with Elizabeth, or Claire who desires to, travel to this place, and I really want to go there, else my life will not feel complete. So I shift from that Claire who desires X, Y, and Z to Claire, she who desires.
mm.
Period. Full stop. And then this desire energy gets to fountain up and move through me and circulate, as opposed to well up and then move out of me. So that's the first place it wants to go. That desire energy wants to come out and create something. And that's
Right.
where it should go. However, when I fixate on the outcome being a certain way, I stop the energy from flowing. That's why people say when you're manifesting, let go of attachment to a particular outcome and
Right.
perhaps say, I want this, whatever it is, or something even more aligned, something even better, something even happier. And so that's when you allow the energy to circulate again and you become the subject of desire. You become Elizabeth who desires, who is a desirer and allows the energy of desire to move through your being. And so that was a profound insight when I first learned about this. Like, oh, I
Yeah.
can shift from like, I need it to be this way. And if it isn't, I'm going to throw a tantrum and be very upset and suffer, to just being like, I am she who desires. And this is just fun. And yeah, I
Okay,
love it.
I want to, yeah, so we're gonna skip over break because I want to stay here. I don't want to like stop this
Let's
conversation.
do it.
Because this is really beautiful and really profound. I mean, like, I feel like I felt that in my body when you did that. Like, I felt that like vertical ascension in my body, like when you did, like, I really relate to, like, oh yeah, like I desire something out here, and like throwing out energy out here, or like getting upset or attached to how it's supposed to look, should look, want to look, whatever, versus being someone who desires. I'm like, oh my God, like even saying that, I'm like, oh my God, that felt good.
Exactly. Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
okay, all right. So okay, so let's I want to explore this a little bit deeper. And the next question that I have is, what's the relationship between, because I think we're starting to get into like taboo territory, right? So like, what's the relationship between desire and fear and taboo in this space?
So the thing to know about desire, there's 5 main things, but I'll give you 2 of them. One is that becoming the subject of desire, she, he, they, me, who desires.
And I really hear how that's like an identity thing as well, because I can hear like a lot of things coming up, being like, oh, like, is that okay? Is that okay if I'm just someone who desires? Like, is there something wrong with that? Anyway, sorry, continue. But
This is part of the process of how we pull back desire to a place of empowerment and liberation. And when we go from desire causes suffering and then work backward or forward or whichever direction, we move away from that stance, then we start encountering the judgments of like, oh gosh, but is that okay? Taboos, and move back into like, is it okay to be liberated? Is it okay to be powerful? Is it okay to have desire energy, creation energy, sexual energy, life force energy? Those are all the same thing. Is it okay for me to have that much energy moving through my body and being that unattached to that energy, fixating on a certain thing that I should be wanting or should have, or this or that? So let me give you and our listeners an example.
Yes.
That I think most of us can relate to. So imagine you're on the dance floor, whether you're at a club or you're at an ecstatic dance event, or you're at one of my favorite, like a partner dance event, and you're there and you encounter a beautiful dancer. Like, this person is super attractive to you and their dancing is so amazing, and it just starts to spark desire in you. And so for a lot of us, our instinct and our reflex is for that energy to go towards that person and fixate, like, oh, I'm now crushing on that person. I want that person. I want to take that person home, or I want to have a dance with that person. I want to be very engaged with that person and fill in whatever agenda, like usually object of desire happens when there's an agenda in place. And so a lot of the time we're going horizontal. We're like, I want you.
Right.
And whether, regardless of gender, regardless of sexual orientation,
relatable.
We can all relate to this one.
Absolutely.
Hot person that's sparking all kinds of yes in us. We don't even know why. I don't even know why I find this person attractive. Like, they match my physical criteria. Their moves are super smooth. Oh my God.
They look confident in themselves.
They look confident. And yes, exactly. Just fill in the list. Our subconscious is just pouring over all the reasons why this person's amazing. I don't even know this person's name. I don't know anything about this person, but I've just made up a whole scenario of who they must be and why I want them. Right. So that's what's going on the dance floor. So we'll snapshot that. So place yourself in that. There you are. And you're like, oh my God, that is the hottest person here. That's the hottest person I've encountered this week, this month, in my whole life, whatever. I want that. I want that person. So that's the object of desire. That's the fixation. And just imagine the heartbreak if you find out like that person already has a partner, or that person's here with someone else and they're not going to dance with you, or like that person has no interest in dancing with you for whatever. You know, there's heartbreak because there's like,
or you overhear their conversation, you hear them say something really like judgy about like people dancing, you're like, oh, that's gross.
Totally, exactly. So imagine if you're fixated on a certain outcome and then something happens that bursts that illusion. When we're an object of desire, we're going to be really hurting that it didn't work out how we wanted. So we've frozen the snapshot. And now what I want you to do is imagine yourself shifting that energy, bringing that I want fixation energy, and bring it back into self, and just being, I am she, he, they who desires. And like the energy that's sparking in me just from encountering and witnessing this person, that's good enough for me right now. Like, like I'm just gonna dance that inspiration and dance those sensations, dance those feelings. And when we stay vertical, we could still go invite that person to a dance or move close and hope they notice us, and maybe they will, maybe they won't. But we're shifting to a place of non-attachment to the outcome. And let's say we do have a dance, then there's the whole other practice of not fixating, like, yes, they want to dance with me. I knew it. We're meant to be together. We're going to go home together tonight. It's a done deal. Like, no.
We're probably going to date. Maybe we'll even have babies.
Exactly. I'm already seeing our wedding and the vows we're going to, like, you see how beautiful, silly humans, we future pace things.
Right.
And we're not with the person in that moment. We don't know anything about them and their experience. We've already drawn them into the future with us. So that's what the horizontal is, ping-ponging between past and future. Whereas vertical, we stay present. And so imagine now you're in this beautiful moment with this person. What happens next and next and next doesn't even matter, because there's that energy of desire that's really, really profound. So I wanted to give that example to help people start to conceptualize of what becomes possible when we move into the vertical. Now, of course, there are places where we're going to encounter the taboo and the fears and the taboos, because wherever there's desire, there's an accompanying fear. There's a corresponding fear. We desire a thing, but we also are afraid of getting the thing. And then there's the taboo. That's where judgment comes in. That's where we find something is not acceptable. Again, who would I be? Like, who am I to think I can have da-da-da? So there's the taboo of like, who am I to think that I could even have this person or be with this person or have this object or this job or this house or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. What comes up for me in that scenario that you painted is like, oh, like if I really were to like truly allow myself to be someone who desires, like moving into that like vertical.
Yeah.
I like Elizabeth, the person who desires in that moment on the dance floor, like what the first thing that came up for me was like, oh, I could like feel my body start to like move and like dance. And then the second thing that came up was like, you're too confident, you're too cocky, like you're arrogant. That was the next thing that came up for me. I was like, oh, dang, that just burst my desire.
There, you see, like there is a taboo. We think of taboo as like, you know, mostly residing in the realm of kink and BDSM. And yes, there are a number of taboos that are there because of cultural interpretations of things. That's part of what we're talking about. But as you just encountered, there's other taboos that are even far more mundane, which is the like, you're too confident. You're arrogant for being that way. It's taboo. It's not acceptable to be confident at that level. And therefore you're arrogant. So you see, that's also a taboo. So we're going to run up against, we have desires. We're going to run right into fears. Like, oh God, now I'm afraid to be so confident. I'm afraid to express my joy.
Yeah. What if other people judge me?
What if other people judge me because it's not acceptable? Boom, there's the taboo. And so what desire helps us with when we're viewing it from a place of liberation or a gateway towards liberation is it helps us to stay present. Because if you were to again go horizontal and veer off on the path of, oh God, I'm too cocky, I'm too arrogant, I'm not supposed to be this way, again, that's also going horizontal. It's afraid of what's going to happen in the future. But if you stay present, then you're just like, wow, I'm feeling fear around being judged for being confident and being the amazing being I am. Okay, let me breathe with that. I'm not going to identify with that story. However, I'm having a response to it. Let me just let those sensations, the, thoughts, images, emotions, and body sensations roll on through. Okay, now I'm back to being present again. Now I was in my dance. I was feeling my desire. Here I am. And then something else will come up inevitably. And then we build the muscles of allowing ourselves to stay present with it. And then from there comes a point where we just are. I just am. I am she who desires. I'm the being who desires. We move a step beyond that, and I just become desire as such. Not even she who desires or he who desires. I just become desire. And when we're in that pure of a place, then we become magnetic. And those things we were reaching outside of ourselves for, what do you think happens a lot of the time?
They just draw in. Yeah.
They're drawn in because they're not being repelled or sought after, fixated on.
I think this is so brilliant because the buzzword of the hour is manifestation.
Sure.
Right. And so this is something that I think is giving distinction to also manifestation as well. But inside of this distinction, I that was just like kind of random thought, but my main thought was this is also giving distinction to things that seem to happen either naturally or by accident, right? Like I find that experience and hear that experience from people. It's like, oh yeah, like sometimes I'm just super on and like, oh, and I'm just like feeling me and then, oh my God, all of a sudden, like people are giving me their numbers. Like, why don't people do this all the time? Or like, oh, I'm just super on and my partner and I had a really good night. Like, oh, why can't that happen just all the time? So I feel like you're giving distinction to something that people notice, but don't necessarily know how to harness, like might not have this level of awareness with desire, being desire, right?
Completely. So it will help us all to learn how to generate this experience and therefore harness by being more hands off, more hands pulled back in, not grasping outside of ourselves, but more just surrendered. And and there's a little map to this. This isn't so much the to-do list or the step-by-step, but this is the map of when you're arriving at a place of being the subject of desire. So think of it as we all start with needs. Like a little baby starts with needs. Like they're needy. They need things for their survival. They're so needy. And there comes a point in our evolution where we arrive, or our development, where we shift from needs, because that's fundamental survival stuff. We shift from needs to wants. So imagine like a 2-year-old, I want that, I want that, I want that. So then there's shifting from needs to wants.
Yeah, I'm going to pull the cereal box off of the...
Exactly, I want it, I want it, I want all the things. And then we evolve and develop to another stage where we move beyond needs and wants, and we move into desire. So think of like a 5th grader, like they have a bit more maturity to them now, and like they would desire, they might not use that word, but they're not as like I want and grasping and grabbing. So it's more of like a desire place. Like I desire that cool backpack, or I desire that cool video game, or whatever the thing is. I desire to go hang out with my friends. So imagine yourself from need to want to desire. The next level is preference. We even move out of desire, like, well, I prefer to have a really lovely time with my partner. I prefer to live in that city I love. I prefer to have that job that brings me joy. So you see how there's stages of development, of maturity with this. And then let me give you the 5th one, which is we move from preference into non-preference. So that's a bit of that equanimity or that neutrality. It's like things happen, life happens. Like sometimes I get what I desire, like what I'm desiring. Other times I don't have a preference about it. It doesn't take me off my center. It doesn't shake me up. So this is what we're moving towards. Oh, that's a very high level.
Yeah.
And we're pointing to it. as a possibility.
Yeah, we're kind of we're starting ground one, ground
Yeah.
one, ground
Is
zero.
noticing I have needs, wants, and desires. That's ground zero. And I've been relating to them in this like graspy, fixated, I want this. It's important to me. Attach meaning and story.
Yeah.
Horizontal.
Okay. We're gonna skip over the break again. We're just rolling right through. I'm just like, nope, we're gonna charge right through. So at the beginning of our conversation, you spoke about the genesis of desire. Is that what you're talking about here? Is that what you mean, or is that something different?
That's something even different. Because let's take give me a desire you have, Elizabeth. It doesn't quite matter what it is. It could be an object. It could be any number of things. Let's talk about that.
I was gonna say, let's talk about one that I've already talked about on this show before.
Sure.
I love shibari.
Nice.
I desire being like tied up and rigged, suspended, even like inverted. Like it's one of my favorite things I desire to be tied up.
I love this. Awesome. So I'm going to co-opt your desire because this is also a desire of mine. And I can give a personal example instead of us like rushing you through a process to arrive at a place, because I have already had this experience and it led me to what I will point to here when we talk about Genesis. So
I'm going to get like 30-second processed here. All right, fantastic.
Totally. Well, we'll see if what I learned from my process we'll see if it mirrors anything that you might learn or already know about yourself. Perfect. So when I went to get tied up, because I was very intrigued about this too, and I had shibari session, and what I learned from it, like when I was bound, I won't say this is everyone's experience or that this is your experience, but when I was bound, like all of a sudden I had this like superhuman power, like I could wrestle and be bound at the same time. I was so relaxed. My mind was clear. Like all these interesting things happened. And so when I felt into like, wow, what's having me desire to be tied up? What's having me desire being bound like that? I found that I'm so much the time like free and at choice. Like I'm creating, I'm doing things. I'm called the shots. I'm the boss. Because I work for myself. I'm making decisions. I'm this, and I'm needing to tend to everyone, and getting it's very noisy, and a lot of my energy is going out all the time. And when I was bound, everything was quiet. Something else was holding me, like to the point of a catharsis. And I realized I am sending out, and I love it. And I'm giving out so much energy all of the time that when these ropes are binding me, it's giving me the feeling of care. It's giving me the feeling of protection, of calming. And I have no idea what your experience has been or would be with the ropes. I'm really co-opting your desire and sharing my experience. But like so much deep care. Just me and the ropes, so much deep care that I realized it really traces back to childhood and to places where I took on so much responsibility as a firstborn and as a go-getter, and that became expected of me. And I was never often like just hugged and held and appreciated and in that way. And so the ropes gave me that missing experience, and it had me realize, oh, it's really a missing experience from childhood. For some, they might call it a wound or a trauma or a harm that happened or neglect that was deep in my psyche, deep in my subconscious. Yeah, I'm not thinking about this when I'm going for a shibari or to be tied up, like that's the last thing on my mind is childhood, But all of a sudden, deep from the belly, deep from the, the deep subconscious comes this realization, oh, there's a connection between that experience way back then of not receiving this and now receiving it. It's just taking the form of ropes and rigs and a rope master and being present in the moment. And then I was able to draw those two together And then it became less about shibari. Like, I must try shibari. I'm so curious. I'm so drawn to it. I now understand why I was drawn to it. So didn't mean to co-opt completely your example, but I could just so relate to it that it shows the actual genesis, that it wasn't ever about shibari.
Yeah.
Specifically. It's just shibari took the form to draw the thing from the past out of me.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, like I was thinking of a specific example. It was the first time that I was suspended and inverted. And there was this, like, because shibari has always brought up like this sense of trust for me. Like there's this like deep like relief and just total experience of trust, happiness. Happiness comes up for me. It's just like trust, happiness, relief, relaxation.
Yes.
And then when I was inverted for the first time, there was this experience of like I think like the English word for it is just beauty.
Yes.
Like I'm not sure if there is an English word for what I felt, but it was like this sense of beauty and trust and release and play and peace and calm. And like I remember giggling and just like like it was just deep rooted. Like it was all the way like in my solar plexus, like all the way back to my spine. You know, we think our solar plexus of like our belly, but like for me it was like all like solar plexus from like the beginning of your belly all the way back to your spine.
Wow.
Of just like like relief and trust. And it was just
that's so beautiful.
Yeah. So yeah, surface level, it's like desire of shibari. It's fun, it's sexy, it's cool, you know, it's impressive, you know, you look good.
You look cool.
Like, you look
good. Totally.
But like, yeah, like deep down, deep rooted, it's this, like sense of like authentic beauty and peace and trust.
Exactly. And then I would encourage going even a step further in your next shibari experience is surrendering to that and allowing the mystery, allowing the subconscious to reveal to you something about why that's so important to you. The beauty and the trust and all the experience you're having. And there might be some dots connected. Right now we're just guessing, but I want to like show a possibility of the liberation is something that might get revealed to you, or an example of something that could be revealed is, oh, I have such a hard time trusting people. Like, I don't do this. And like, here I am trusting, and I don't trust because
on trust forever.
So many of us have. Yes, exactly. And in a moment like that, we can have a realization like, wow, I don't trust people. And I don't trust people because, and then subconscious reveals, oh, when I was 6, that blah, blah, blah experience happened. And that's when I just gave up on ever trusting people, you know. So we start to connect dots from parts of ourself and our past that get frozen. We call it the frozen child at my school. The frozen child, there's a part of us that gets frozen in the subconscious. And then we're forever creating and recreating experiences that are attempting to unfreeze that child, but that are actually perpetuating the belief that child created of it's just not safe, or I don't belong here, or I don't matter, or, you know, for me, I have to give in order to be loved,
right?
As opposed to I get to receive,
right? Like I need to, mine is I need to have value.
Yeah,
I need to have value. Like in order to be liked, in order to be loved, in order to be received, in order to be accepted, I need to have value.
And notice how you said, I need to have value. Right. And then you can say, I wish to have value. I desire to have value. I prefer to have value. I have no preference over having value. you see how we can evolve?
Yes. Oh my God. Okay. I have to pause.
Yes.
I have to pause our conversation because we are coming up to a close, but I've been
Yes.
like holding it off. I've been looking at the clock being like, no, we'll just talk a little bit longer.
I know, it's so juicy. It's so juicy. It really is.
Okay, so I have to ask you my favorite question.
Yes.
Okay. What does love mean to you?
That's a great question. And there's a million bajillion responses. And for me, a friend taught me an acronym for love, that LOVE stands for lasting openness, values everything and everyone. And so for me, love has started to mean, as opposed to, again, fixating like, I love you, Elizabeth, because you're this certain way and behaving this certain, doing these things for me. It's loving, like not having preference is love, like the non-preference. And that's not caring. That's the full acceptance, the full acceptance of myself, the full acceptance of other, the full acceptance. So there's like the valuing of everything and everyone. I guess you call it like the unconditional love. So I've been pondering that realm of love. Like, what is it to just be open, that lasting openness that values everything, as opposed to the romantic love that romanticizes everyone and everything and wants them to be a certain way.
Oh my God. I love that. All right. And I know that you have a giveaway as well, which PS, we're running up against time. So
we'll go really fast.
We'll go super, super fast, but it's also in the show notes. So anyone who's interested in the giveaway, it's in the show notes. Go click on it. Okay, Claire.
Yes. So this giveaway is a free workbook. It's called A Tantric Approach to Desire. And it's looking at desire as a path to liberation. And as part of that, well, certainly there's the five ways that desire is a path towards liberation. And this workbook walks you through a lot of what we've talked about today. So that's free. And that link is below. Grab your copy, please. And then it also links to or talks about a course we have at my school. My school is called Shakti Shiva Academy. That's shaktishiva.academy. And we have a course that goes even deeper into all this called Desire, Fear, and Taboo. So today we just scratched the surface, but that course really handholds into a deeper place of looking at desires, fears, and taboos and liberating ourselves.
Beautiful. Okay. And all of that is in the show notes. Thank you so much for being on the show, Claire. It has been just an absolute pleasure to have you. And thank you, every single person who's been listening, watching. Remember to like, subscribe, hit the notification button. Follow me on Instagram for more information. That's at ELZ Cunningham. And we're live every Tuesday at 3 p.m. on the Transformation Network Facebook page, aired every Thursday on YouTube and podcasts. All the links are in the show notes. And until next time, everyone, keep loving. You have been listening to The Elizabeth Cunningham Show, courageously expanding love with me, Elizabeth Cunningham. Tune in live every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on transformationtalkradio.com, where we shed light on relationships, sex, love, and the ways we wish we could be, but never thought were possible. Learn to love yourself and create the relationships you want. Connect with me at elizabethannecunningham.com. That's elizabethannecunningham.com.